American society changed profoundly in August of 1945, and it's reflected in the culture, it's reflected in the architecture, the art, the design, the literature. Nothing was the same after the end of the Second World War. Again, it's not a pro-Nazi statement. I couldn't be more anti-Nazi. Obviously, I'm an American. I care about this country and what happened to it after 1945, and it's a very clear demarcation line, and it seems obvious to me that nuclear weapons are demonic. There's no upside to them at all, and that anyone who claims otherwise is either ignorant or doing the bidding of the forces that created nuclear technology in the first place, which are not human forces, obviously.
No, wait, hold on. When Tucker Carlson said the nuclear weapons are demonic, you'd think he was saying the result of using them is so devastating to humans, it's demonic. But that's not what he's saying at all.
Oppenheimer, and this is what's so chilling when you say about secular, he used, I think it was the Hindu god Vishnu. They called the project the Trinity Project, right? And at the very test there in New Mexico, he quoted what the god Vishnu about, now I'm the destroyer of worlds, right? Don't you find that chilling, or is that tied to your, since that time it's been all, we've now dropped the spiritual, which even Oppenheimer realized in The Greatest Generation. We kind of went to what is a totally materialistic secular society that leads America to this place in 2024, and the instrument of its turnaround or its rejuvenation is a guy like Donald Trump?
Well, we didn't drop the spiritual. We just embraced, another element of it. I mean, if you're quoting a pagan god as you're incinerating civilians with a nuclear weapon, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that was the pivot point in America's history. And it's just so interesting how resistant a lot of people who I consider friends, who I agree with on most things, are to acknowledging that. That call you a pro-Hitler, you're a Holocaust denier if you question the nuclear weapons or whatever. I don't care. Of course, I'm none of those things. It goes without saying, or it should. No, I'm just noting the obvious.
We can already see that Steve Bannon, the convict who's fresh out of federal prison for evading the January 6th committee subpoenas to further incriminate Trump, is on this narrative for the sake of turning it into a story of his leader being the superhero that we all need to deliver us from the demons of 1945. But let's let Tucker talk about more of the obvious.
And let me just ask you this, which I've asked a million people at dinner parties, but never in public. What was the moment we can point to that nuclear technology was invented? We can point to Isaac Newton and say, what apple fell on his head? Or we can point to Albert Hoffman in his lab messing around with the, ergot bacteria. That's when LSD was made. I've never met a person who can isolate the moment where nuclear technology became known to man. And so where did it come from exactly? Oh, German scientists in the 30s. Really, when? Name the date. And I've never heard anybody do that. It's very clear to me that these are demonic. I mean, these are evil. Their only purpose is to destroy the innocent, to murder the innocent. They've only been used once. And I think there's an interesting ethical debate about their use. Was Truman right or whatever? But if you take 3 steps back, you could say, well, wait a second. If you end up killing, incinerating tens of thousands of civilians, that's just a bad thing. Let's just be honest, that's just a bad thing.
Now, I'm no expert on the origins and development of nuclear technology, but considering all it took was a 5-second search, I discovered multiple domestic and international informational pieces that would give these guys the answer that they've yet to hear about. But there was something he said at the end that applies to more than nuclear weapons.
If you end up killing, incinerating tens of thousands of civilians, that's just a bad thing. Let's just be honest, that's just a bad thing.
Weird. We're willing to accept dropping 2,000-pound bombs on innocent civilians in Gaza that also tends to incinerate tens of thousands of people, but only draw the line at nuclear weapons. These people are dead too, but Tucker and them don't blink an eye because they're not the right kind of people to protect.
And by the way, the fact the second bomb was dropped on the Christian population of Japan, which was majority in Nagasaki, in fact, it was sighted in on a church in Nagasaki. Was that an accident? Why Nagasaki exactly? And by the way, why has every subsequent American war resulted in disproportionately the deaths of Christians? That would include Vietnam, by the way, where the Catholic population was decimated, up to and including Iraq and Syria, now in Russia. Why is it that our use of force consistently since the end of the Second World War has been against Christians. That's been the effect, to kill Christians. The bombing of the Balkans in the 90s under NATO. Why is that? And I just don't think it's an accident. Clearly, it's not an accident.
So what I'm gathering is that he believes America targets Christians in conflicts throughout history because the culture shifted to satisfy the demons that changed things in the 40s when they developed nuclear technology near the Earth's core or something like that.
And so everything went wrong then. And there are bad things in America before 1945, but the descent has been precipitous. And you could hardly say that this country won that war. In what meaningful sense? Why don't you go to Kyoto or Tokyo and then come back to New York and LA and tell me in what sense we won? These are very obvious observations. I just picked them up from traveling. I didn't read them in a book. I've just noticed. And why is that controversial to say it? Why does the entire staff of the Daily Wire call me a Nazi for saying that? I don't really get it. What is that? What are you defending and why? What are you defending and why? And let me just say with humility, you shouldn't be defending the killing of innocents. You really shouldn't. And if you are, you ought to ask yourself why you are.
He's almost got it.
And let me just say with humility, you shouldn't be defending the killing of innocents. You really shouldn't. And if you are, you ought to ask yourself why you are.
Yet we defend it, joke about it, and crave more of it every day when it comes to people that we deem dispensable. People we assume are dying more appropriate deaths because they're not due to nuclear bombs. Again, I'm no expert on nuclear technology, but when the argument about them is based in calling on Donald Trump to reconfigure our society that Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson believe was skewed by the supernatural and demonic creation of nuclear technology, it just boils down to more MAGA indoctrination. And Tucker would know. He said his spiritual awakening came after a demon visited him in the middle of the night, and he didn't get the message that might be because he's going down the wrong path.
Do you think the presence of evil is kickstarting people to wonder about the good?
That's what happened to me.
That's what happened to you?
Oh yeah, I had a direct experience with it.
In the milieu of journalism or just?
Nope, in my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed and mauled. Physically mauled.
In a spiritual attack by a demon?
Yeah, by a demon. Or by something unseen that left.
Is that right?
Claw marks on my sides, on my...
So it left physical marks?
Oh, they're still there. Yeah. A year and a half ago.
Was your wife terrified? I know you were.
I wasn't. I was totally confused. I woke up and I couldn't breathe and I thought I was going to suffocate, and I walked around outside, and then I walked in and my wife and dogs had not woken up, and they're very light sleepers. And then I had these terrible pains on my rib cage and on my shoulder, and I was just in my boxer shorts, and I went and flipped on the light in the bathroom, and I had 4 claw marks on either side underneath my arms and on my left shoulder, and they're bleeding.
Wait, they were bleeding?
They're bleeding, yeah. No, they're actual claw marks. And I sleep on my side, so I wasn't clawing myself. I don't have long nails. And they didn't fit my hands anyway. But yeah, that happened. Well, the next morning I woke up and I thought that was the weirdest dream I've ever had. And then I saw blood on my sheets and I realized that was not a dream at all. So I called my assistant, who was like the only evangelical Christian I know, well enough to call with something bizarre like that, totally bizarre like that. And she said, oh yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, people are attacked in their bed by demons. What? What are you even talking about?